That's kind of cool. You have a stick right there to steer instead of steering wheel, so you eventually see everything. I wish I had backlights on my car. That way, if someone brightened me, I could just go. Like this last episode, we got a lot of money because we sold 4 harvests. I mean, we're up to $1.4 million. We made the pledge to save up money. Yep, let's see. Ah, crap. Yeah, I can't do anything. I only skip when I can't do anything. Hey, you think that's bad? I can just put down a wind turbine right now and just start farming money. Hey, at least I'm not, you know, doing multiplayer, making like little groups and destroying them in single player and just facing all the money. Oh, that's pretty. You know, I have never understood how a combine works. Hey, look what it is. It's one of the smaller what's it called?
How many times have you driven by a field of grain ready for harvest or seen the massive machines in those fields harvesting the grain everywhere? How do those machines work? How is a machine able to take an entire plant and keep one small part of it? How does it take this and turn it into this?
Kernels.
The modern combine is an amazing machine. The name combine comes from the fact that it does
It combines harvesting, sorting.
that used to be accomplished by multiple different machines and combines it into one machine.
You know what I wish you could do? I wish you could take a combine and take it back to people hundreds of thousands of years ago. What would they think? And this field right here, soybeans, would probably take a few weeks to harvest. By a group of probably, let's say, like 200 people, it'd take, like, maybe even like 500 people, it'd take them like 2 weeks to harvest. Meanwhile, that group can be reduced from 500 to as little as, like, what, 2 or 5? And, or even one person, and entire weeks of work can be reduced down to mere hours or days.
The combine cuts the crop, threshes the grain, and then finally separates the grain from the chaff. There are three main designs. The oldest uses a cylinder to thresh the crop and then passes the crop to a set of. The newer design, which is more prevalent today, uses a rotor or twin rotors to thresh and separate the grain from the plant. The third design is a hybrid of the first two. The cylinder threshes the grain where it is then passed to two rotors to separate the grain from the plant. Everything begins at the header. The header is an attachment that attaches to the front of the combine, cuts the crop, and moves the crop to the feeder house. There are several different types of headers that can attach to combines depending on the crop being
Corn headers, sunflower headers.
In this case, we're using a corn head that follows the rows of corn and strips the ear of corn off the stalk. Different types of headers also include rigid and flexible.
Imagine how many, by the way, those like pokey things, like, if you go right here, like the corn heads, like the spikes are actually made of like plastic. They're not made of metal, they're made of plastic. Or at least one of the John Deere headers I found was made of plastic. Corn heads are a lot smaller. I like corn. I wish I would harvest corn, but it's not as profitable as soybeans.
Row crop headers, stripper headers, and pickup headers. On a corn head, rotating knives grab the corn stalk and yank it downward.
And yeah, I yank it downward. Yeah, that's cool.
The width between these blades is wide enough for a corn stalk to go through, but too narrow for the ear of corn to pass through. The ear of corn is stripped off and changed with lugs while the ear of corn back to the oven.
Oh, I thought the entire plant would go through.
Where it is fed into. The feeder house contains chain-driven slats that bring the crop to the feed accelerator. From there, it is transferred to the main threshing component, the rotor.
The rotor is my most complicated part. I don't understand how that works.
Inside of a cage called concave. The rotor spins anywhere from 300 to 1,000 revolutions per minute, depending on the crop being harvested. As the crop spins around the cage with the rotor, it rubs on the other grain and crop material and is loosened from the plant. This is called threshing. Concaves have holes in them of size large enough for the grain to fall through, keeping the larger pieces of crop residue inside the cage. After the grain is threshed, it is thrown out of the rotor cage by centrifugal force. This is called separation. The crop flow through the concaves is controlled by the speed of the rotor and angle transfer pipes. After the grain is separated from the crop residue, it falls into the cleaning system. The cleaning system consists of the shaker pan and screens, which are called sieves. The sieves shake back and forth to stratify the grain and chaff. Because of the shaking action, the grain, which is heavier, falls to the bottom, while the chaff, which is lighter, rises to the top. The sieves have slots large enough for the grain to fall through, but small enough that the larger pieces of chaff cannot fall through. Underneath the sieves, a fan blows air upward at high velocity, usually around 1,000 RPM. This air is enough to keep the lighter chaff suspended where it is blown out the back of the combine. The sieves are a two-stage cleaning process with one sieve on top of another. The upper sieve will keep the majority of the chaff from falling through. The lower sieve has smaller openings to catch any final chaff and keep it out of the clean grain. The sieves in this particular model are self-leveling. This keeps grain from flowing all to one side when the combine is harvesting on the hill and overloading the sieves and causing grain loss. The crop material that remained in the rubber cage is ejected from the cage and passes through a rotating drum with knives called a chopper. The chopper sizes the residue to promote faster decomposition and easier planting the following year. The chaff and crop material from the chopper are ejected into twin rotating discs called spreaders. The spreaders spread the residue evenly across the field. The clean grain falls through both sieves onto the clean grain auger. This grain is fed into a chain with paddles called a clean grain elevator. The elevator carries the grain upwards and dumps it
right in that hopper.
The incline auger dumps the grain into the grain tank where it is stored until it is unloaded. Now you've seen how a combine works in slow motion. Let's see how it looks at full speed.
That is insanely fast. Incomprehensible. And there goes all the junk. I love gold. I love how corn looks so golden.
Now that you've seen how a combine works, maybe you can appreciate these basic machines the next time.
I'm about to say, this millennial farmer.
That door was left open last night. We knew that the pool gate was propped open, but never shut.
This kid got his own tractor, which is so adorable. Millennial farmer.
Alright, it's a little bit windy out here, so hopefully you can hear us. First things first, as I drive forward into the plant, snout will run alongside the plant and leave it out to the visible spot on the header. As that's happening, these rollers right here are spinning around really quickly. They're spinning towards each other, pulling the plant down really fast. As the plant gets pulled down, it hits the cob right here on these depth.
Yeah, it is perfect. I mean, yeah. If you look at stalk of corn, it is so thin. Meanwhile, the cob is like, this is like the width of like a corn plant. This is like the width of a cob. Both backward.
Towards the combine, and this auger runs in like this and feeds it from each side like this, where these center paddles will grab the corn and pull it into what we call the feeder house.
Just how violently it pulls down the corn is insane.
So this feeder house right here is a big drum that runs from one side to the other. It's got 3 chains on it, and it's got these paddles right here that grab the grain as it rolls and pulls it in back through there. Any questions on it? These ride along the ground and they sense how high the header is. So I can adjust how high I want these snouts to ride on the ground. And this senses how high it is. This is for the auto steer. So this bounces along on the plants and it taps along these plants and it senses where that plant is and then the combine steers itself
That is actually very interesting.
wherever they need to be. So back here, this is what we call.
Hey, look, there is the auto steer right there.
This area from here, right behind the header, to this area here, right underneath And it's inside here. I'll pull this shield off for you. It's a little easier to see then. So the rotor is inside underneath here. It's a great big giant metal corkscrew. And after the feed accelerator throws the grain into it, it's basically spinning around and it pulls that grain. The feed accelerator spinning and pulls that grain through it. As it's being pulled through it, I'll pull these covers off so you can see inside there better. So this big corkscrew is hard to see, but it's inside these rings. And it's a big steel corkscrew that spins around. Pulls the grain in from the beginning and pulls it through here. And as it's spinning, the grain and the kernels, the part that we want, falls through these rings. And it falls onto these augers. Where these augers pull it through to the front part, where it starts to shake and separate the grain a little bit more from the rest of stuff that comes through. So it gets separated in here, and then it comes back here to separate more. What makes it through this area keeps going back, and it goes back farther and farther on this rotor, on this chapter, and eventually down onto the seams inside. So when it first gets to this chapter, it will separate. And basically, the chapter and the sims are these sets of metal fingers in here.
See, you probably
And it dance around.
usually you can see this.
They shake around and they separate. So that they will separate the chapter from the kernels that they want. So when they're separating in there, they're dancing around. There's a big fan down into here. Those screens. That basically blows all this stuff off the back. And then the kernels fall through to the bottom, where they get sent into an auger that gets taken to the other side. I'll show you a better view here. Inside. So there's a better view up front there. Up front there is the chaffer, where it shakes it down and separates it. As after it gets down to the sieves, it gets separated some more. It will end up in our grain auger. In the trash that doesn't end up falling through those grates or the concaves into the chaffer and the sieves. When the machine knows it's definitely got trash, it throws it out through this final meter here. It throws it against the back wall. In between the fan, blowing the air, and the meter throwing the trash, and those knives up there on this drum swinging around really fast.
Yeah, those knives basically destroy everything left. That's actually what's happening. All that stuff being thrown on the back, that's all the, all the soybean that you see. It's the rest of the, it grows on the stalk, right? You can probably see. It grows on this like stalky plant, and the stalky plant is what is the waste, and we want the soybeans. You probably see those little, you see like the little things that are hanging out. See how it's kind of like making like almost like a triangle shape? That is your soybean pod. And the rest of it is like this stalky, planty stuff, and that is what's getting shredded in the back of this combine. Yellow. Oh wait, I just got a comment on my video. Might be yellow cake slurry from a spill. You probably want yellow cake slurry. What the hell is? I know what yellow cake is. It's a radioactive goop. Not goop, but it's like a radioactive compound. Yellow cake. That's a thing? You know what? Yellow cake slurry? Don't do this, please. Okay? As a nuclear enthusiast, don't do that. Just stay safe. Don't glow. I have 666 subs. Is that liquidized uranium solution? If it is spilled slurry, I should definitely report it to the college. Is this guy seriously not have a guy counter for this? Yeah, here's the video. I'll play it.
So, I'm working community college right now. And, you know, just chilling out. That's what I do.
Yeah. Here's the video.
for her class, and I was stepping into this pit, and you see that's like 1.27. It's getting up to like 0.2. What the world's going on here? And then I'm like screening rocks, and I'm like, that kind of looks interesting right there. So I go look at it, and it is intensely radioactive. 309 microsieverts an hour. I have no idea what it is. I have no idea how it got here. But I'm getting radiation readings all the way from here. And I'm 4 feet from it. And it's pushing up the medium. I have no idea. It looks like a piece of uranite. This is insane. Like, take a look. Five microsieverts an hour. It was getting up that hard. Some places. I don't know what it is. But it's intense radioactive. I think this is like, it's like triple as hot as orange yesterday.
That's what it looks like. This is what it looks like. I don't know what that is. But it's radioactive. I will not be surprised if it is yellow cake. Yellow cake is very concentrated uranium, and basically, for example, Fiestaware contains somewhere 2.5 grams of uranium. Uranium is radioactive. Now, of course, the more uranium you pack together, the more radioactive an object is. So, really, yeah, if the glazes contained like 4 grams of uranium, they'd be way more radioactive than before, because they're supposed to contain 2.5 grams of uranium. Now, what's it called? Yellow cake, well, it is a science community, and you know what? That rock was found near a science building, like the science section of the entire campus. So, you know what? I need to start my own investigation. I need to find out where this radioactive rock came from, and if no one, even anybody knows about it. I don't want to spread panic, but I want to spread awareness, because, you know, I know that it's radioactive. What if somebody does it? What if a kid that wants a rock, right, and thinks it looks cool, what if they bring it home, unrealizing that it's very dangerous if they keep it close to them at a constant exposure? What happens then? I don't think it's anything to panic about. Although I think the situation could be resolved, and it could be, and no one has to get hurt if everybody follows directions and listens to safety procedures. The rock must not be able to be broken up into small pieces, and definitely must not be consumed. That is the key thing about radioactive material. You must not eat it. It is significantly more dangerous outside of your, or it's significantly more dangerous if it's inhaled or ingested than if it weren't. Because when alpha gets into your body, it releases its energy into you, ruthlessly, gutting you from the inside. There is a security safety division. I know who to search up. Nile Red. He'll know what to do. This guy is YouTube's chemist. Ooh.
On your glass made entirely out of uranium, but it is glass with uranium in it. This got me really interested in it, and I decided to buy some. And I got this cup of it off eBay. Pure uranium glass is normally yellow, but this one is green, and I think it's because they put some iron into it. Regardless of that, though, that's not really what makes uranium glass special, and it's what it looks like under a black light.
The black light, yup. When you do this,
the uranium in it fluoresces, and
like
it makes
this.
this really nice green color.
It
The
does.
actual amount of uranium in it, though, is quite small.
It is,
So
yeah.
the glass itself is only minorly radioactive. General glassware in cups like this were super popular in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. However, during World War II, the government started confiscating all the uranium and diverting it to nuclear research. This kind of killed the entire industry for uranium glass until the late 50s, when some restrictions on uranium were
I don't think I have to attach this thing
few
ever
companies
since I've gotten
started
the
making
clip.
it again, but at that point, the health effects of radiation were a lot more well known. And also, after the nuclear bombs, the public perception of uranium wasn't exactly great. Nowadays, there are apparently still a few companies that make it, but I wasn't able to find any of it for sale. As far as I know, if you want to get some uranium
There
glass,
is a lot of uranium glass on the
only
market.
buy the old stuff.
The really great way to find it is just go through antique stores. I've never visited an antique store, to my knowledge, that has never had uranium glass. I've seen anywhere from a store having like at least 20, 30 plates to having at least a few hundred. Uranium glass is extremely plentiful, which is actually pretty cool. I do have a ton of it. Wait, I have at least 30 pieces myself. Some of them being more of a yellow cakey color.
I found this all really interesting, and I've been wanting to work with uranium for a while, so I decided to make some uranium glass. My original plan was to buy some uranium ore, and then refine it, and use that purified uranium to put into some glass. However, I learned from Cody over at Cody's lab that the government doesn't really like it when you show how to refine uranium on the internet. Instead, I had to start with an already purified source, and I was able to find some depleted uranium. This means that it's missing the isotope to do things like generate nuclear power or make nuclear weapons. However, it's still good for making glass. Uranyl nitrate is the nitrate salt of uranium, and when it's pure, it can form these nice yellow crystals. Besides just kind of looking pretty though, it seems relatively mundane, and that's something that I've always found interesting about radiation. As this uranyl nitrate just sits there, it's shooting off thousands of extremely small particles, but they're way too small to see or to feel. So, there's no way to naturally perceive that it's there, and this was one of the biggest reasons why it took so long to discover radiation. To know that it's there, it has to be detected using some sort of instrument or setup.
Cloud
And over
chambers
the
or Geiger
years,
counters.
Many different methods have been developed. Nowadays, one of the easiest ways is to just use a Geiger counter. When we were starting this project, I didn't have one.
What?
However, when working with something radioactive like uranium, it's pretty much absolutely necessary. So I looked around online.
GMC 320, I used to have one of those.
Which wasn't very expensive, but it was
Although I do recommend you get the GMC 600 Plus. That is way better. It's more sensitive though.
supposed to be decent.
GMC 320s are pretty okay for the like the really bad
background
betas.
radiation was about 15 CPM. CPM stands for
Counts per minute.
and it's a reading of how many radioactive particles it detects over a minute. Radiation exists everywhere in the environment, and you're always being bombarded by it naturally, and this reading of 15 CPM is actually quite low. Now, it was time to test it with the uranium, so I just
It's
put
gonna
it
go
next to
8.
it.
Ready?
There was clearly
That's my. I used to have that exact Geiger counter.
usable for this project, but it
Beep.
unfortunately
Beep.
wasn't going to be super
Beep.
accurate.
Beep.
This was because most of the radiation that's let off by
It's baited.
uranium
There's
is
alpha.
in the form of something called alpha particles, and this counter's not even able to detect them.
Which is why I got a GMC 600 Plus.
The beta and the gamma rays that it's letting off, which are significantly less than the alpha. Despite this though, it's still really useful, as they don't actually need a super accurate rating. I just have to know whether or not it's there. Now before getting started, I just wanted to try one other thing. Urinal nitrate was supposed to be fluorescent under UV, so I put some on a dish, turned off the lights, and shot it with my black one. And well, it was definitely fluorescent. This made me think that maybe to make the uranium glass, I could just directly throw urinal nitrate into some molten glass. However, when I looked it up, it didn't seem like that was the case. I mean, I could barely find anything about making uranium glass in general, but out of all the info that I did find, it always mentioned using something called sodium diurate. Based on this, and considering the fact that I've never made uranium glass before, I figured it was probably best for me to use that as well. Now,
Just getting dark.
Sodium uranate.
Monsters and ghosts.
Diuranate. It's probably like a sodium atom, two uranium atoms connected to each other.
now though, this meant that the project was going to be a bit more.
Wait, that might be pure uranium.
I have to do some uranium chemistry to convert the uranyl nitrate into the sodium diuranate. To get this started, I had to add the uranyl nitrate to a beaker, and normally, I would have just quickly weighed it out on some paper and then dumped it in. However, this time, I was working with a uranium compound, so I had to be a lot more careful. This is because the dust that it can let off is not only radioactive,
But is
it's
inhalable.
also toxic, and it can lead to heavy metal poisoning. So, to be as safe as possible, I carefully weighed everything directly into a beaker, and in total, I used about 15 grams. Then on top of this, I dropped in a magnetic stir bar, and I poured in some water, which should have been enough to dissolve all of the uranyl nitrate. I turned on the stirring, and I waited for it all to disappear, but unfortunately, it ended up staying a little bit cloudy. I tried adding some more water just in case there wasn't enough, but it didn't seem to do very much. This was unfortunate, because it now meant that I had to clean things up a bit, and I didn't really want to have to work with a solution of uranium. Thankfully, however, cleaning it up wasn't exactly going to be super difficult, and I just had to do a quick filtration. I did this by passing it through some cotton and some sea light, which is kind of like superfine sand. The stuff that initially passes through tends to still be a bit cloudy, so I let it run for a bit, and then I swapped it out for a new beaker and put the other stuff through it again. After this, it was perfectly nice and clear, but there was still a bunch of uranium solution all over the funnel and in the cotton and sea light, so I washed it out with a bit of water. When all the water had eventually passed through, I took away the funnel, and the solution was pretty much good to go. Now, to convert this to the sodium diuranate, I had to react it with something called sodium hydroxide. This is also known as lye, and it's often sold as drain cleaner, and that's where I get all mine from. For this reaction, it also all had to be dissolved in water, but the exact concentration of it didn't really matter. I figured that something around 30% by weight.
He's got his own
would be
branded
good,
beakers, that's
so I
actually
measured
pretty
out
cool.
about 70 mils of water and dumped in roughly also generates a lot of heat, so in the end, the solution is usually pretty hot. However, I wanted it to be closer to room temperature, or maybe just slightly warm, so I put it in the fridge to cool it down. When I felt that it was good, I took it out of the fridge, and I started slowly adding it to the urinal nitrate. Almost immediately, it started forming these weird, solid, kind of donut-looking things, and this was all sodium diurenate. The reason this happened was because unlike the urinal nitrate and the sodium hydroxide, the sodium diurenate is practically insoluble in water, so the moment that it formed, it separated out. What I had to do now was basically just keep adding the sodium hydroxide until it stopped making the diurenate. At this point, it was still pretty simple because the solution was nice and clear and it was really obvious to see. However, I eventually started stirring it and the whole thing got a bit murky, so I couldn't just rely on looking at it. Instead, to know when it was done, I had to keep testing the pH. I did this just using some cheap pH papers, and I kept adding the hydroxide until it turned blue, which told me that the pH was about 10. After this, I just let it sit there for a bit to make sure that it all fully reacted, and then I filtered it off. I just did this by pouring it through a simple coffee filter, and when most of the water had passed through, I washed it a few times with distilled water. I then let it sit there until all that water passed through as well, and now I had some relatively clean sodium diurenate. It was all still wet and goopy though, and I'd have to try it out, but it was going to take forever just sitting here in the strainer. With other chemicals, I'd usually just set up a fan on the side to help speed things up, but that would probably end up shooting a small amount of dust into the air, and I didn't really feel comfortable doing that with uranium. So instead, I carefully took out the coffee filter, and I put it in a bowl, and I pulled a vacuum on it. Under a vacuum, water vaporizes a lot more, and this makes it dry a lot faster. In a closed space though, like in this vacuum chamber, there's nowhere for the water vapor to go. So to fix this problem, I included a bunch of drying salt at the bottom, which would constantly pick up the water vapor. I pulled it out about 5 hours later, and it was mostly dry. I purposely didn't let it dry completely, because I wanted to avoid as much dust as I could. By keeping it slightly wet and
Yummy. It looks like what happens when you chew up goldfish.
it all off without making any death clouds. Also, besides the safety issue, I was worried that if I let it dry completely, that it would just stick to the paper and become impossible to separate. I was able to get almost all of it and put it into a small bottle, but there was still some stuck to the paper. Getting this last bit was a lot sloppier than I wanted it to be, but I didn't really have any other alternative. I just did my best to scrape it all off, and then everything that even remotely came into contact with the uranium was put into a special waste container. Everything that I took off was transferred to the same small bottle, and I did it as carefully as I could, but it was still a bit messy. There was a bit of uranium that managed to get on the outside of the bottle, and I of course had to clean that up. And I did this by just wiping it down a few times with some wet paper towel. Now, with all the uranium safely in the bottle, and none of it on the outside to poison me when I touched it, I was ready to finish drying it. To do this, I put it into the same vacuum chamber that I used earlier.
I have that exact same vacuum chamber. That's a pretty cool chamber.
I wanted it to be as absolutely dry as possible, so I left it in there for 3 or 4 days. So I came back to it a few days later, repressurized the chamber and took it out. And well, it worked. It was really dry.
Uranium.
When it's dry like this, though, it has a tendency to give off dust and powder, which is obviously really horrible to breathe in.
Good job, guys.
This is
Shake it
why
around
I
multiple
only
times.
tried
Make
it
sure you get that
completely
dust
in the
loose.
final container that I was storing it in, so I wouldn't have to move it around or handle it. I went ahead and weighed what I had here, and it came out to be 9 grams, which was about what I expected. Just for fun, I decided to test it with the Geiger counter, and you can see that the glass was able to block most of the radiation. The reading that it had was only barely above the normal background level, but that totally changed when I moved it over the top.
Yeah,
The reason this happened was that most of the radiation that was being let off here
It's beta.
was in the form of
Alpha,
alpha and
yeah.
beta particles,
Beta.
and they just couldn't make it through the glass. As I
Glass?
mentioned before, though, this counter isn't able to pick up alpha particles in general, so what I was seeing here was probably mostly from beta particles.
Oh my god. You know what? Let's go up. That Geiger counter, if you put it above that solution, would have sounded like this if it was with an alpha particle detector. That's what it would sound like with alpha detectors. I like to have alpha just to make sure I can get all the radioactivity I can.
I moved it over the top. The reason this happened was that most of the radiation that was being let off here was in the form of alpha and beta particles, and they just couldn't make it through the glass. As I mentioned before though, this counter isn't able to pick up alpha particles in general, so what I was seeing here was probably mostly from beta particles. Now one other thing that I wanted to try was to shoot UV on it.
Wouldn't it be better if a leather holster could lock? With limited carry options, responsible...
Yeah, I wish I could.
And I was surprised that it didn't fluoresce. I mean, maybe it was fluorescing and it was just super weak, but as far as I could tell, it was pretty dead. I thought this was really interesting because logically, you'd assume that if you wanted to make glass fluoresce, you'd put something fluorescent in it. However, I guess that just isn't the case, and glass chemistry is a bit more complicated than I thought. But anyway, now that I had the sodium diuronate, I could start trying to make the glass. However, I'd never made glass before, so I kind of had no idea how to do it. I looked around online, and one of the best things that I found was a video by Ben, who runs the channel Applied Science. He gave a lot of good details and tips, and almost everything that I'll be doing here is based on stuff that I learned from him. I also got a few tips from Andy, who runs the channel called How to Make Everything. When it comes to making glass, it's not super straightforward, and there are a lot of different ingredients that can be used. For beginners though, Ben just recommended to use a mixture of 3 different things: silica, sodium carbonate, and boric acid. So that's what I went with, and all these ingredients are really easy to get, and I just ordered them all from Amazon. I then got a jar, added 60 grams of each, and shook it up to mix it a bit. Like this, it would probably work to make glass, but in my opinion, the powder was still too chunky. So to fix this, I put it all into a blender, and I ran it for a few minutes. This apparently worked pretty well, and after this, it was a super fine powder, and it kind of looked like flour. This was definitely way better than before, and I hoped that it would give me a better quality glass. Before adding any uranium to it though, it was a good idea to test it to make sure that it worked. I had also never made glass before, and it was probably a good idea to get at least some experience making it before...
That is a very good idea.
The general idea behind making glass was very
You shouldn't
simple,
build a jet
and
until
all
you've
I
built
had to
an
do
airplane
was
before.
melt this powder. So, I added a bunch of it to this dish
More
that I
than
had,
fun.
which was normally used to melt things like gold, and I put it into a small furnace. By the fact that it was glowing orange, it was obviously pretty hot, and I had set it to around 1100 C. I wasn't completely sure that this would be hot enough to melt it, but when I checked on it a few minutes later, it looked like it was working. And now, because there was more space in the dish, I decided to add some more glass. At this high temperature, the sodium carbonate was mostly just melting, but the boric acid was breaking down into boron trioxide and water vapor. This caused it to bubble a bit, and you can see this if you look really closely. The main purpose of these chemicals, though, was that they both have much lower melting points than silica, and they help lower the overall melting point of the mixture. Pure silica only starts melting around 1700 C, but at that point, it's still way too thick to work with, and you have to get it well over 2000. Getting the temperature this high is just very hard in general, and because of this, additives are almost always included to lower the melting point. In my case, because I used boron trioxide, the final result would be some sort of borosilicate glass. In general, borosilicate glass is a lot less sensitive to big changes in temperature, and I hoped that this would help prevent the glass from cracking as it cooled down. But anyway, I let it sit like this for about 30 minutes, and I waited for it to completely liquefy. When it eventually looked like it was about ready, I used a blowtorch to preheat a graphite square. Then, I carefully got the dish from the furnace, and I poured out all the glass.
Ooh, I love the look of liquid
I let it
glass.
cool over the next 15 or 20 minutes, and it looked pretty decent. It looked like just a regular piece of glass, and I was actually pretty proud of it. I really thought that it would crack, but apparently it didn't, and I was still a bit skeptical of it. So I left it overnight, day, it was still totally fine. As far as I could tell, this glass mixture worked pretty well, and the process seemed to be relatively simple. After doing it just once, I was definitely by no means a pro at making glass, but I felt that I was ready to get the uranium involved. To do this, I just had to add some uranium to the glass mix, but it was still a bit too chunky.
Chunky.
If I added it like this, it wouldn't mix in properly, and it would make some really uneven glass. So far, I had really done my best.
I'd say you're gonna have to powderize it, and that's dangerous.
But unfortunately, I didn't really have a choice here. I just did my best to grind it very carefully.
Last thing you
and
want.
to try to make as little dust as possible.
Am I the only one that would keep? Yeah, radioactive powder is evil as hell.
When I was done, I put it all back in the bottle, and everything that came into contact with the
That's
uranium
I would use a
was
CM7M
by
gas
wasting
mask.
Now, to actually add to the glass mix, the amount of uranium that I needed was super small. However, I didn't know exactly how much I had to add, because from what I found online, some recipes use as low as 0.1%
And as high as like
uranium,
2%.
and some as high as 3%.
Oh, close.
This concentration was all done by weight, and I decided to go with a moderate 0.25%. I figured that this way, if the final glass didn't glow well, I could just add some more. At 0.25% though, barely any was needed, and for what I had here, I only had to add 0.4 grams. To mix it in, I shook it around for several minutes, and when I was done, it looked the same as it was before the uranium. As far as I could tell, it was still really white, and I guess there just wasn't enough of it to noticeably change the color. The dish from before was already in the furnace, and I started loading it up with some spoonfuls. I waited for this all to melt, and then I added some more, and I left it there.
That has to
for
be
about half
radioactive,
an hour.
does it?
Also, as a point of safety, just in case it let off any uranium fumes. In reality, there probably wasn't much or any of it, but it was obviously something that I had to be very careful with. When I checked on it and it looked ready, I preheated that graphite block again. Then I took out the dish and I poured out what was hopefully uranium glass. While it was still red hot, it was hard to tell, but as it cooled, it was definitely colored this time. It also shrank a bit, and when I felt that it was solid enough to move, I picked it up and put it on some glass insulation. With a white background, the color was a lot easier to see, and it was a really nice and bright yellow. This was exactly what I was hoping it would look like, and so far, things seem to be going pretty well. Now the next thing to do was to test
Do
and see
it,
if it was
yes.
fluorescent. So I got a UV lamp, turned it on, and I mean, it was kind of working. The glass was definitely a bit green, but it wasn't very impressive to say the least. My first assumption from this was that 0.25% just wasn't enough uranium. However, then I thought, maybe it was just still too hot, and I had to wait for it to cool down. So I decided to have some patience and to test it again a few minutes later. This time it still wasn't amazing, but it was for sure better
It's starting
than
to glow.
before. I then let it cool completely down to room temperature before testing again, and this time
Yes!
it worked really well. The 0.25% of uranium that I used was apparently more than enough, and I guess I wasn't going to have to add any extra. There
Wow.
was still some glass left in the
Only
dish,
0.25%?
so I figured out as well
1 out of
that maybe
400
I
parts
black glass thing.
of that
This one
solution is
also
uranium.
worked
That is
well once
insane.
it was at room temperature, and it glowed nicely under UV. After making these, it was getting late, so I had to leave everything and come back in the morning. Unfortunately, though, when I checked on the glass, one of them had spontaneously broke. These pieces were a lot bigger than that first test run, and it was looking like this might cause some problems. One of them was still okay, though, and I thought that maybe only one of them breaking was just some bad luck. Then, almost as though it somehow knew what I was thinking, it responded by splitting in half right when it was sitting in front of me. This was completely random, so I unfortunately didn't get it on camera, but this made it clear to me that there was an issue. This was happening
It's not
because
pure.
I pulled down the glass quickly and unevenly, and it had caused a lot of internal stress. What I thought might work to fix this was to just insulate the glass and have it cool down really slowly. The final result would still be under high stress, but I was hoping that it would lower it enough just so that it would stop spontaneously falling apart. For the this one, I also decided to try making it a lot bigger, and I loaded up way more glass. I then poured it all out, and the moment that it looked solid enough, I put it between some insulation. After that, I moved it to one of my benches to cool, and it initially seemed to be working well. However, a few hours later, I heard the sound of breaking glass, and this was what I came back to. A lot of stress had clearly built up, and it was apparently enough to shoot some of it a couple inches. The pieces that survived didn't seem to be too fragile, at least when I was hitting them. However, shocking them with heat probably would have caused them
He's
to
making
pop.
dust off. Don't.
I decided to try breaking a piece of it with pliers, and it was surprisingly difficult. The moment that it did break, though, it just exploded from all that internal stress.
No, no, no.
I thought this was really cool, but what I wasn't a fan of was all the powdered uranium blast dust that was flying everywhere.
That is a hell no to me.
After doing this, I realized my only real option was to anneal it. To do this, I have to hold the glass at around 450 C for several hours. At this temperature, the glass is solid, but it's still liquid enough that its atoms are able to move around. This happens really slowly, which is why it takes several hours, but it lets them move into new positions and reduce the overall internal stress. This is the proper way to do things, and it's what I ideally would have done before, but I was trying to avoid it because I only had one furnace. This makes it much more difficult and slow to do things, but I figured I would try it out. I still really wanted to make a big disc of it, so I melted the rest of the powder that I had, and I poured out another one. Then, as it was cooling, I quickly changed the furnace temperature to 450 C, and I put it in. To anneal this, it would take at least several hours, and I was planning to leave it overnight. In the meantime, I collected all the broken glass that I had, and because now I didn't have a furnace, I melted it with a torch. Now what I wanted to try here was to do some glass blowing with it, but I had no idea what I was doing, and it was a total failure. Instead, I just made several beads that I thought were small enough that I could get away without annealing them. However, at the last minute, I got the genius idea to anneal them just in case. I knew it was a bad idea to open the furnace, but I did it anyway, and it was, well, a bad idea. I tried to put it in quickly, but when the beater touched the disc, it started forming a crack.
No.
I then tried to move it around to get a better look at it, and cracks formed everywhere that I touched. I actually thought that this was pretty cool, but now I was worried that it would just end up exploding again. So I took it out, and I blasted it with a torch to heat it up again, and to melt the surface. This way, I was hoping that even if there were cracks, if I sealed the top, it could prevent it from falling apart. After this, I put it back into the furnace, and I let everything anneal overnight. The next day, I was worried that I'd open it up and just see a disaster, but it turned out to be fine. I was initially a bit disappointed that the big piece got so cracked, but I actually ended up liking it. I think having it like this made it a bit more interesting. I think the small beads that I made also turned out really well, and none of them were cracked or falling apart. The question that I had now, though, was how radioactive were these pieces of glass? Considering the amount of uranium that I put into it, it was definitely quite low, but I still wanted to test it. The Geiger counter that I had, though, wasn't the best for this, and I decided
I will admit,
to
that
test
Geiger counter is
one.
cool, but it's not the
This
best.
one is much more sensitive
Yep.
and has a
Yup.
detection area,
Pancake tube.
and it can also
Pancake
detect alpha
pancake
particles.
probes.
To test it out, I did it with the biggest piece, and with the uranium concentration of only 0.25%, I assumed that the reading would be really low. However, it was nearly what I got with the pure uranyl nitrate, because it was now actually seeing the alpha particles. The detector also had a totally different shape and a much larger surface area, which
So yeah, it is gonna get hotter.
particles. As a unit, CPM only shows the strict number of particles that it detects, and it doesn't differentiate between things like alpha, beta, or gamma. This is important, though, when trying to judge how dangerous a radioactive source is, because they aren't all equal. For this reason, it's sometimes better to go with a different unit like Sieverts, which will take this into account. In microsieverts per hour, this gave a reading of about 5.5.
Toasty, but
This, which I got
actually pretty tame.
from the Nuclear Association. It means that if you held your cheek against it, it would be like getting a dental x-ray every 2 hours. Now for one of the beads, I got that it was only a about 1.3 microsieverts.
That's actually
per hour.
very tame. I have a piece of uranium glass that goes up to 8 microsieverts an hour.
Though, at this level of radiation, this glass is generally safe to have around.
It is.
And to occasionally handle. However, it would be a very bad idea to fill your pockets with them or something, and to carry it around all the time. It
Exactly.
might be okay to occasionally wear it as a necklace or something for a short period of time, but I don't think it's the greatest idea. In a somewhat recent video, I said that I wasn't really going to be doing sponsorships anymore, and it was mostly because I didn't feel comfortable doing them. One of my biggest issues was that I didn't like being told what to say, or to cover specific marketing or buzzword talking points. Even though I would never promote something that I didn't genuinely like, I just didn't really like this part of it. I decided though that I'd start doing them again if I could almost have completely free reign over them. And when I came up with this idea, I honestly didn't think that anyone would actually do this, but to my surprise, Brilliant approached me and they did exactly that. Before this, I had actually never heard of Brilliant, but I've been using it now for about a week, and I really like it. I mostly use it on my phone, but it's also available on the computer by just going to their website, brilliant.org. They offer a bunch of mini courses in things like math, physics, chemistry, and computer science, and they do it in a way that I think is really fun. This is because they take a different and more active approach to learning that makes it feel a lot more like a game. They cover a lot of the fundamentals, and I've been mostly focusing on the physics ones because physics has always been a huge hole in my knowledge. What I also like is that it's really easy to start and stop because it's broken up into a lot of small sections. I generally don't have a lot of time to do things, but I'm still progressing through it, even when I just randomly go on it for several minutes at a time. But with all that being said, if you're interested in learning something new, you should definitely check out Brilliant. They offer a free version, which you can try out first, and then if you like it, you can sign up for the premium, which has a lot more material and many more features. Also, if you do decide to go with premium, you should sign up using my link, which is brilliant.org/NileRed, because they're giving 20% off to the first 200 people that use it. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one. As usual, big thanks goes out to all my supporters on Patreon.
Uranium glass. I love uranium glass.
Imagine if you could design products as quickly as your ideas flow. Imagine if 3D modeling was as natural as drawing with a pencil. Imagine if there was a 3D design tool you could learn in days.
Wow, an advertisement that's actually something I like. Out of thousands I don't. Shape of Dude, you don't have to have a radioactive, like, box in order to contain uranium glass. You know that, right?
Oh yeah! Alright, welcome back. And
Uranium glass is one of the very few radioactive objects, if not the only radioactive object, that I feel safe actively being around. As long as it's like the green stuff. As the green stuff is not really... It's not really that bad. However, the green transparent stuff is not that bad. The yellowy tinted, non-transparent uranium glass is hotter. It's like I feel like I'm not progressing that much because like it's been like almost like 5 hours in game, but it's like I literally have half the field cut down.
entry-level look at uranium blast. Probably one of the coolest type of blast that you can have in your collection. Aren't you getting tired of glass, Morgan? No, and especially not uranium blast. And you're gonna be pretty amazed if you don't know about uranium blast already. So in today's episode, I'll be going over what uranium blast is, how to spot it, show
A really great way to spot it. I almost don't need any Geiger counters or blacklight to even spot uranium glass. I have gotten such a good eye for it. And I'm not saying that just to speak out of my butt. I actually have a pretty good eye for uranium glass. I can literally tell you if it is or not. But the cheapest way to find it is just usually use UV, but if you do not have anything to find it, it is a very stereotypical green radioactive look to it. It's got that like uranium green. Like when you take a when you go to like a movie, you see like the green radioactive color you think of. That's really what it is. That's what color it is. Now, don't be confused with like beer bottles or Coca-Cola bottles that have a little bit of a bluey, greeny tint, like a turquoise tint. No, they are lime. Like, I have the color to represent it too. May take like lime green construction paper, a little bit darker than that, but there are uranium glass. Oh wow, uranium glass is pretty cool, right? I don't think I can afford it. No. The most expensive piece of uranium glass I saw was $300. Oh wait, but that was a lamp. That was only one. I like what's called 95% of the pieces of uranium glass I find are below like $15. They're very cheap pieces to own. However, sculptures are very expensive compared to their normal, counterparts. I do recommend that. Uranium glass doesn't really need to be stored anywhere special. Actually, I'm wrong. I would still store it. Like, it doesn't need any like radiation containment. If you store it within a glass cupboard, that's great because glass protects against alpha and beta. Gamma, you're not safe against it, but gamma radiation is very low. Like, even my Geiger counter that can detect the beta and gamma is very low. It's so low that I usually get bored of scanning it.
Quick little experiment that I did, just for fun. And then lastly, we'll have a quick overview of the market and the price of uranium.
Yeah, it is relatively cheap. The great thing about uranium glass, it's everywhere in any antique store.
3 signs your itchy dog's gut needs help. Number 1, they lick their pup.
Well, as the name implies, uranium glass is glass.
And it typically looks like a bunch of older glass pieces.
Of uranium is that it fluoresces with ultraviolet rays in the end. And a quick throwback to chemistry class. Uranium is a natural occurring chemical element finding on the periodic table, atomic number 92. Just in case you're wondering, uranium was discovered in the late 1700s. 1800s.
1786 was it? Hey Alexa, when was uranium discovered?
Uranium was discovered in 1789.
Oh, so close! I was so close. Come on, you gotta give me an A. I was like only 3 years off. It's a pretty good estimate coming from me.
They could somehow figured out that by adding small amounts of uranium to the glass mix, only 1 to 3% of the finished glass would yield this nice green yellow color, depending on what type of glass they were making. And you might be thinking to yourself, uranium, the same element that's used in nuclear bombs and nuclear power plants? Well, yes, that's exactly the same thing. The same uranium used in those applications will also be used in...
Okay, let me clear things up. Uranium is made out of glass. It's made out of a U-238. What is uranium glass made? It's usually uranium-238, right? Because I'm not wrong. Because if I'm not wrong, uranium glass basically is made out of U-238. U-235 is the good stuff that is used for enrichment. It's what's known as fissile or fertile, which means that it'll throw off atoms, or throw off particles. And once these particles hit another fissile material, that fissile material will explode, sending off more particles, and those particles will hit more fissile materials, starting a chain reaction that can sustain itself. Anyway, what's it called? Spider on my wall, and you are dead. You stupid steroid crap. Ow! I almost fell and ate my garbage can. I almost fell and landed my face on the garbage can. So yeah, I definitely am gonna think about leading a investigation. I must find out where this thing came from, because, you know, it had 80 microsieverts of penetrative radiation. That is dangerous, and that must be contained. I don't want to start a panic, that's not my goal, but I have a saying, radiation can either command your life, or it must command your respect. If you don't respect it, it will kill you. It will destroy you. It will absolutely annihilate you. I bet I could probably remove this bridge, but it's not a really good idea.
So while uranium glass was very popular from the 1850s and onwards, by the time 1940...
So my guess is it's either carnotite or it's either what he said, which is uranium slurry. Which, if it's carnotite, it could contain up to 50% of its weight, or 53 even percent weight of uranium, which is very dangerous. I mean, compared to uranium glass, which is like only 3%. The estimator contains 20%. It says here it can contain 20% uranium by weight. Which is still, it's 20%. I'd say is decently, it's pretty radioactive. But yeah, but the 50% is ugh.
Scientists in the U.S. military discovered the science and technology behind nuclear fission and the atomic bomb. A ban is placed on all commercial use of uranium, as the military need all the uranium they can get their hands on for the war effort. This ban essentially marked the end for the commercial use of uranium in glass. Although the ban of uranium was lifted following the end of the Cold War in the early 90s, by then glass makers had figured out other ways or other ingredients to use in order to get this green color to their product. And large-scale use of uranium in glass production was never seen again. So how to spot it? So if you want to go uranium glass hunting, you can confidently assure yourself that the glass you have found indeed has uranium in it. You have to buy yourself a UV flashlight. Here, I got 3 pieces of glass. Under normal light, it can look like number 1 and number 3 might have uranium in it, and number 2 is just a normal glass.
Number 1 is
but when we turn off the light and light them up with a UV flashlight, we see that number 1 definitely has uranium in it, whereas number 3 has no uranium in it. assume that glass number 1 has a lot higher uranium content than glass number 2. And before I move on to my little experiment that I ran, I have to mention a quick detail regarding UV flashlights. There are 2 common types of UV flashlights that you will find online. One that emits in the 365 nanometer spectrum, and one that emits in the 395 nanometer spectrum. I'll attach a link to an article in the description box that explains the science behind this. But basically, the 365 nanometer will illuminate glass with lower uranium content better than the 395. The 395 kind of washes away some of that fluorescence. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for. But I've been using the 365 just because I want to spot anything that has any uranium. Maybe I'll switch over to the 395 once I only want to get glass that has high content of uranium. And they're only like 10 to 20 bucks a pop, so I recommend that you get yourself a UV flashlight if you're going to estate sales, or if you're going to a thrift store and want to find some uranium pieces. So we know that uranium is radioactive, but I wanted to see if I could detect any levels of radioactivity emitting from these glasses that I got right here, plus I got a few ones sitting over to the side. I bought the cheapest Geiger counter.
GMC320 Plus.
It was like $100 for this thing. Kind of pricey, but whatever.
That's cheap for Geiger counters.
So I removed all of the uranium glass from the table and turned on the Geiger counter. And I let it sit around for a few minutes just to establish the baseline level of radioactivity in the background. I'm measuring CPM, meaning counts per minute. And basically that just shows you the number of ionizing events being registered every minute. I don't know if it has any effect to stacking them this way, but it just seemed logical to me. And as you can see, the Geiger counter is picking up on radioactivity. That's pretty cool. That is probably the coolest thing about these glasses. Besides that, the fluorescing is cool, don't get me wrong, but the fact that this is radioactive and you can detect it, that's sweet. This collectible is truly radioactive. And let me just say, these levels are totally safe. This nuclear radiation safety guide that came with a Geiger counter shows which levels are safe, and anything from 5 to 50 CPM is harmless. Alright, now let's finally talk about the market and price. Well, it's hard to give an exact number on the price of uranium glass because, like with everything, it all depends. Obviously, things like condition and rarity matters, but with uranium glass, you kind of have 2 different types of people buying them. You got collectors that only collect uranium glass simply because it has uranium in it. And then you have this other group of more specialized glass collectors that will collect different types of glass, such as Vaseline or custard glass. And although those type of glass contain uranium, that's not the main reason as to why you collect them. Well, with that in mind, however, you can go to the sold listings on eBay and see that overall there is a big market for uranium glass. Simple pieces start at a few dollars, but very quickly you see an increase, and unique pieces can fetch big money. Since most people are unaware of uranium glass and the cool properties that they have, you can often pick them up really, really cheap, especially if you do a sweep at the estate sale right before it's about to close. You just go in there with your UV flashlight, see if there's anything that fluoresces, and you can get them for pennies almost. I only paid, I don't know, $1 to $5 for these things. These 4 glasses here, I paid $1 for.
Yeah, they are very, like, dirt cheap.
This one here, I actually paid $5 for, but this one's pretty cool. And before I wrap up this episode, I'll just throw out my prediction regarding the future value of vintage and antique uranium glass. I think that nuclear energy will most likely become our most important source of clean and safe energy in the future. And with that, I'm thinking that a renewed public interest and awareness of uranium will emerge. This is not investment advice, but if you have uranium glass laying around, hang on to it. That's at least what I'm going to do. And whenever I come across a piece that I think is uranium, or if I come across a nicer piece that I know is uranium, I'll definitely pick it up and add it to my collection. Alright, that's it. I hope you learned something today. I hope you learned something about uranium glass. I hope you got a little inspired to maybe go out and find some pieces yourself, because these things are pretty cool. If you haven't done so, consider subscribing if you want to see videos like this. But if not, that's totally okay too. And until next time, stay balanced.
That's cool how the sun is actually to the southern part. This is somewhere in North America. Man, those sunglasses are awesome. I just typically love figuring glasses.
Sunlight is also
almost done. I love spectral lines. Every element produces these spectral lines, and it's like a rainbow, but prettier. If I'm not wrong, helium produces this beautiful tan, peachy color. Hydrogen, if I'm not wrong, like an orangey red. So is neon. Every element produces some. Most of them are known. Even uranium has a spectral line identity. If one was so smart, one could identify elements with spectral lines, but that would be very, very hard to learn. I like how like the game's very, very conscious that it's winter because it gets dark really early. I mean, it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Meanwhile, at 5 o'clock on June, it would not get this dark. It's getting there. I have to go here in a second. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Yeah, but it is almost done. It's only a matter of when. I'm gonna have to refill that dude over here in a second. Yeah, at least like the top part's done. This job actually might be, this method might actually be faster in terms of harvesting. Yeah, like starting there and harvest, and as soon as you get like right here, then start the guy on the planter. Within about 2 or 3 passes, he's probably gonna catch up. I had a quad track, I'd turn it into like a tank or something. Turn this sucker around. I'm gonna pause the game. Be right back, guys. I'm watching a Rags to Riches story on Farming Sim 22. If you do a Rags to Riches gameplay, I respect you, man. I mean, that is a lot of grind. I mean, I could probably do a Rags to Riches gameplay if I really wanted to, but it is a time investment.
I'm not sure exactly which attachment we need for our tractor, so we'll gamble on that. But I think especially with the cost there, this plow is even more expensive and it's smaller. So that's not going to help us out as much as the subsoiler would. So I think that kind of makes our mind up for us. Because of money? Yeah, I think so. That's $5 grand, it'd be nice. We just don't have it. We just don't have it, and I don't think it'd be smart to finance because we have no money coming in. So, cool. Let's look at cultivators. I don't think there's anything that I downloaded. No, we haven't installed anything that would be worth buying or that we can afford. So, let's go with it. 650 bucks, not too bad. So we picked it up and we're starting to head home, and it's
like how it's small little flowers.
Same as the tractor, or same as the Gator. We'll see you in a little bit. All right, another load of wood for 2,300. So we're moving along.
That's good. I mean, that's not a lot of money, but it's getting somewhere.
Not bad. So
better than no money.
Establishing a few fields here, and I am going to use Horseplay to do the outline. So we did a custom drawing of the fields and how I want them laid out. We are going to generate this. I'm only going to do the headland though, for them to actually create the outline of the field for me. So if we do just one headland here, and that should do it, we'll generate the course. And then if we start with, yeah, we'll do maybe 2 headlands just to give us a little bit of room. Yeah. Okay, so we got the course started here, and I sped up to time lapse just to kind of get it done and speed it up. Again, we're losing money here. We do have it where it's a worker doing this for us, so it is costing us a little bit of money. We found someone in town to help us out just to get this outline down while kind of role-playing here that I was staying on the barrier of our property to make sure we didn't cross over, and having this person that we hired help us hit the mark so it would be quicker for us. That's the role-play thought in mind that I had there. You can see we're just about finishing up this first pass, and that gives us the outline to be able to just fill in the inside ourselves. Very sweet. So the second field will just rinse and repeat the same thing. We'll head on over. You know, having these 2 fields might be more than we can handle, but I'm hoping we'll be able to get through it without going broke. Jumping in here again, you know, CP2 is what this field's going to be called, and just generate it and select the field, the target. We're doing it wrong. Field position, there we go. That should highlight it. Now we should be able to jump in here, get the field position, the direction we want, open it, generate it. Again, just rinse and repeat of what we did with the last field. Again, just kind of helping us out to establish this outline so that we stay within our boundaries. Felt like it was the safest, cleanest way, and it helps me get, you know, fields in the exact path and design that I was hoping for, which will be really cool. It'll be really nice. It's a nice way to establish this new land that we own, and I'm really hoping going for 2 fields just at the start isn't a mistake, because I do want to have 2 different types of crops, which means we have to have multiple types of equipment. We'll see. Oh man, this has been a grind so far. I'm hoping I can get this one field, this smaller field, done before it gets dark. I'm not sure how good the lights are on this tractor, but yeah, we got some trees to cut down too, or that we cut down that we gotta get rid of next episode. there we go. I think we're just about done. It's, you know, getting dark. We been had a successful
Man, he's
August.
got a good
I feel
field
like we've had
going.
a successful August. We have money in the bank. Just cleaning up this edge here. We got plenty of trees to, you know, turn in and get more money next episode as well, or next month in September. Just a couple spots that I want to make sure we completely clean up, and there we go. And we'll do the other field next month and turn in some more trees. I'm really excited about the way this is going to transform. It's going to be awesome. I'm Socks Way Up. Thanks for hanging out on the Farming Sim channel.
Pure Leaf Crafts Real Brewed Iced Tea, using the highest quality tea leaves. No artificial flavor.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Sim Socks Way Up channel. We are in Newlands, a new series.
Wait, next video.
Welcome back to Newlands. I'm Socks Way Up. Last episode we established our fields, we cut down some trees, made some money. Now we gotta rinse and repeat. Really, rinse and repeat. A little bit of rinse and repeat. How about one more rinse and repeat? Yeah, let's head on over and see where we're at. We want to get this second field plowed today, as well as earn enough money to make sure we can buy the cedar and get some crops planted. But first, we're going to take advantage of these logs or these trees that were inside our fields. We're going to get them cut up, put them on the trailer, get them ready to ship on over to the sawmill and get them sold. Got our first load prepped for September. We're heading over here. Hopefully we can make this turn. Yep, we got it. See what we did. We got to get to 7,000 as we mentioned. Oh, we lost one. As well as a little bit of extra money for the seeds as well. We can't forget about that because that's going to cost us money. And we just hit something. All right, let's get, that's good. Drop it. We'll have to move everything back into the right location, but let's get the other ones unstrapped. Yeah, we'll move that over a little bit there. And this little one, that's a tiny little log. It's probably like $5, right? That there. Let's go grab this one that we dropped because I want to get a full sum. I want to make sure we see the entire amount instead of just one. Oh, what the heck? Get over here. Let's get on over here. Come on. You can do it. There we go. And magic number is 2,600. Nice. Almost 2,700. That will do.
Not bad.
So we're going to get some plowing done. I don't want to just do logs, as I mentioned. We're going to get this field prepped. This one is the larger of the two. It's going to be a grind. This is such a small working width. It's, oh man. Much respect to anyone who has played through this style of game and not lost their mind.
Man, that is such a small plow. I don't know if I would keep my cool up in that.
I tried. I really tried. We're gonna take advantage of our lease-to-own option here. What do we go with though? We gotta be careful and make sure it's something that we can pull. So let's go ahead. It's probably gonna have to be this $12,000 one. Yeah, it's still a little above what our tractor can handle, but let's give it a shot. I couldn't do it anymore. We're gonna have to switch this up. Let's get that added. It'll give us a much larger working width, and yeah, let's hope. So getting over here, I already feel like this is gonna look gorgeous. I'm really excited about the way these fields are gonna turn out, and this width just, oh, this makes me so happy already. So happy. Changes the texture, which I actually like better when we're doing cultivating and plowing instead of that patchy texture that you get with the subsoiler there. But yeah, this cultivator's gonna work much better. Eventually we'll even upgrade to a larger one, but I think this will get us there. Again, we leased it. We got to purchase it. We got to hold on to it and deal with the fees. So, yeah. I think this is definitely going to be worth it. We're already getting done here with some of the last passes. Let's get this lowered, get going. The power of this tractor seems to be okay. It recommends 90 horsepower. We have 80. It seems to be pulling it off. So both these fields are getting there. We just gotta, get a little bit more cash in hand after this to be able to afford that seeder and start getting things planted, so we can start making money outside of, just being a lumberjack, because that's just not the most fun thing to do, in my opinion. But yeah, this is looking great, and I just cannot wait to drive up to this area as it gets established and we start seeing it transform into an actual farm. And these fields they're gonna look sick. All right, that should wrap up this area. I'm hoping this is the load that will put us over the top here. It was the rest of the lumber that we had from the fields that we established.
Now you just need to get a seeder and a harvester. In my opinion, the toughest thing about starting a field from scratch probably would be a harvester, because, look at this.
Money's getting tight. It's getting tight.
You got it. Right, let's say you start... I'd have a seeder, but look. You got your plows, like $16,000, or... Maybe let's see your seeders, right? They're like $33,000, but look at the harvesters. This cheapest one's like $75,000. You're gonna need money to get the harvester.
It's recent season.
Oh my god.
So here we go, making that turn.
No more passes.
Gets us over 7,000 and money for seed. We might have to do one more trip of lumber. Let's see. Here's the wood. 1,700. So that gets us before we lose money. Let's see where we got cedars all the way over. Yeah, Sarah.
He's using a little bit of mods to get the cheaper stuff, but cheaper stuff is not that good.
Next, succeed. Alright, this should do it. See, we have 4,000 in our name. We did a couple of trips already. I'm hoping this is the last one we have to do for where we go. Okay, we got that sorted out, and we're now back it up. This load should get us enough of a cushion to purchase some seed. Yeah, $6,000, and there's also, a lot of other things we're gonna have to purchase to start maintaining these fields.
Oh, there's a little chunk out there just sitting.
Picking up the seeder finally. We can get this attached. Hopefully everything works fine. I haven't really tested this, so fingers crossed. Doesn't cause us to do a wheelie. Looking good. Looks nice. It's like the right size for that tractor. But let's get in here. Let's get to the bag purchase. Just do one for now.
Yeah, those big bags are the good ones.
Started. So yeah, filling it up. That's 7,000 liters. So it'll be a little bit left.
He's not gonna do wheat, is he?
We'll have to come back and get that with the gator later on. But let's start that nice descent down to our farmland here. Get back. It's already late, so I think we're gonna have to plant the grass or wheat. I'm not 100% sure what we're gonna do yet on these two fields, but it'll probably be grass on one and wheat on another. We can already start seeing, yeah, look at that out in the horizon there. Those fields are looking nice. Let's see what happens when we get to this turn. This is what I'm really excited about. Come up to this turn here. Yeah, oh man, that's gonna be pretty. It's gonna be pretty. But I think we got a lot done for September. It was pretty good. We'll get to October. One of the things that
I need to start cow farming because I want slurry. Slurry is just like crap stuff. It's already just poop. But it apparently you could do like a double pass method, like how the slurry. What's it called? I hear one of the slurries dispensers can either go like a light appliance or a heavier appliance. The lighter appliance has a fertilizer level we're doing now, but the heavy one it basically like pushes up to full fertilizer level. I think it's this one, but I feel like you have to have like a tank. Always feels great to finish a harvest because that just means I know that just means money in my pocket. Like that harvest, I mean, at least, you know, in my defense, it is repetitive, but the great thing is that it's just one field. It's not like back in the day when we used to farm and we started out, we'd have to go, for example, we went from field 45 and we had to crawl over the field 46 and 44 and 49 and 48, 47, 40, 50. Let's go. I think it would take, the length it would take to harvest all those fields with all of our old equipment is the length it'd probably take to harvest this field with the equipment we have right now. So basically the time the time to harvest I think did not change. However, the output went from like what, 30, at least the output went like from 30,000 or 33,000. It's like all the way to 130,000. Whoa, that just feels different. I'll show you what. Oh no. Seriously, I hate when that happens. Oh, I'm a little bit against it. I definitely will change the field's dimensions after I'm done harvesting. Like, grinding for like the good farm. Driving without lights on? That's a stupid move. Check it out. It's an iPhone, the iPhone 15 I finally have it. Oh my gosh. I'm not one of those people that trades out a phone every single year. This is actually my third phone I've ever had. First phone I got back in like 2017. Like 2018. No, it was 2017. It was a Moto, and in 2018 I got a iPhone SE, and now I finally have an iPhone 15. This bad boy will serve me for at least half a decade. This thing will not be replaced. I do have to pay like $20 a month on it, so that's gonna take out of my money I can use, so... My opinion, I would need a new phone. My phone was getting old, it was getting buggy. I have to see my camera. Whoa, I can zoom in so far. Oh, that's so cool! Look at this! You can increase your FOV. What the hell? That is so cool. Check this out. You can zoom in like this, but you can zoom in very far in. See how good my picture looks. It looks a little grainy. I want to take a picture of it. I'll say that the back camera is not as good as quality, but the front camera looks a lot better. Oh, this thing has 500 gigs. Wait, does it actually tell you when your camera's... Yeah, it has a little green light that shows up like this, but then when I swipe out my app, the light fades away, and that indicates that the camera is not being used. It's a very nice design. I am liking the iPhone 15 so far. I even have to download Spotify on it. I mean, I usually use my iPad to make all my stuff, but my iPhone has a lot more storage. How much storage does this iPad even have? I'm gonna have to vinyl it. Let's see, so yeah, we produce 125,000 liters of soybean right there, and then yeah, it's really rare for me to get the brand new phone. Like I've skipped. When was the iPhone SE released? ...2016. I had an old phone. Like, let's take a picture of a coin. Let's go find nickel. Let's go get a wheat penny. Great. I'm gonna get a wheat penny and I almost thought about like farming like this back part over here, but I don't know. It almost seems like more trouble than it's worth. Close enough. Let's find the wheat penny. There should be one in my basement. That's pretty good. Wheat penny. Pretty decent. Here's a picture I took. Not the camera I have, so it'll probably not do this thing justice, but here's a wheat penny. Oh my god, the camera thing's still bright. Pretty good wheat penny picture. I will say, I like how the phone is a little bit bigger than the one I had before. The one I was like kind of, I couldn't touch it, but it's like, don't take out context. I mean, you can definitely see how good it looks. And another thing that's cool about this phone, it's not the phone. It comes with the phone case. It comes with a holster. See, holster. You have your phone right there. Although I kind of like it. Because, like, somebody could, actually, it actually locks on pretty good to your pants. It doesn't feel way too heavy. Although, in my opinion, I think you should take the phone and place it inside out. Oh, that's one thing my phone didn't have before. The newer generations of iPhone, if you touch the screen, they come on like, boop. Pretty sure my my iPad has this. Yeah, my iPad does have this. My old phone did not have this feature. Anyway, I'm actually gonna take a break. I want to go listen to my homework and do some other stuff, but